Cool. Damon, it's wonderful to connect with you. Thank you, sir, for taking a minute out.
Joe, I'm an honor to be here today. Thanks for having me, man.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Let's begin our journey into your good work by asking you this. We're on the 5 year anniversary of this pandemic. It threw us into the unknown. Hopefully, we're all better coming out of it now. How much of living through that time period has influenced and affected the way that not only you do business, but live your life?
I think it's a great question. And, it was obviously a horrible time for everybody, right? I mean, so many people lost their lives and the world went into chaos. And it was also kind of nice to see everybody kind of get together, help each other out a lot of times, and collaborate and pivot and do business differently. I think for me, one thing that really changed, like I was mentioning to you, I have young children. I have a 7-year old and a 3-year old. 3-year old wasn't born at the time, but being at home with COVID, locked up here in San Francisco, where we're really on lockdown, the time I got to spend with her at the beginning with my wife and my daughter, like taking naps at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, being present, it's kind of like a blessing, to be honest, right? Because, I travel a lot for work, I'm doing all these things, but my first kid and I'm there laying in bed with her at 1 years old. So it was a really strange time, but I mean that really for me was a blessing to be so present with my kid.
Yeah. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do right now. I know there's been a lot of incarnations leading up to right now, but if I put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids, career day, let's say they're sixth graders, and the curious kid in the back of the room is like, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
How I answer that is I run Learnit, and Learnit is a live learning platform. So it's hands-on training. And I don't know if a sixth grader would understand this, but our customers turn to us when they're looking to upskill their managers. Let's say somebody just got promoted into a management role for the first time and they don't have the skills that they need to be successful because it's a different type of role. So we help upskill them on stuff like that. Or you want to have a stronger culture or better communication. So we offer virtual classes that are 2 hours long that people could attend. Prior to the pandemic, 85% of what we did was in person, but we pivoted after the pandemic, and now about 90% of our training is all virtual based. And we're coming up on our 30th anniversary in June. I've been here since the beginning, and we work with companies of all sizes to help upskill their teams and help them achieve the outcomes they're looking to achieve.
So when you were a kid, fifth,
Mhm.
sixth grade, what was your dream? Was it to be in the major leagues?
I wanted to be Willie McCovey or Will Clark, or
Right on.
possibly my idol Joe Montana. But I realized my dad played college baseball. He was a pitcher,
Yeah.
but he was okay, a relief pitcher. And I really enjoyed it. I was lucky, Joe. I grew up with all these guys who, all my buddies were we love sports. Basketball season, it was the Warriors. Football season, it was the 49ers, San Francisco Giants. But I realized by the time I was a sophomore in high school, that if I was going to play college or professional sports, that baseball is my ticket. I was an okay basketball player, so I went all in, worked really hard, and it worked out for me. I was a high school All American, and after my senior year, I got drafted by the Atlanta Braves, pretty high, and also I had a full ride to go to Pepperdine. So yeah, that's so my at a 6-year old, my dream to getting into sports, I was doing a pretty good job with it.
So how did the baseball career work out? How did all of that happen?
So it worked out pretty well. I mean, so the first big leadership lesson I learned, I actually went to Pepperdine instead of taking the trip to the minor leagues. I would have been on Chipper Jones' team. He was
Yeah.
the first pick of the draft that year. He would have been the shortstop. I would have been the first baseman in West Virginia, Pulaski, I think. But I went to Pepperdine because our coach, Andy Lopez, who I still keep in touch with, he had this great vision of moonshot vision. Like, we're going to win the College World Series.
Yeah.
And a lot of people thought, oh, we have 2,500 people at the school. How is Pepperdine ever going to do that? But he's like, we're going to put the team that gels, that works together, strong pitching, great hitting. And so I got there, and I'll be honest, I had imposter syndrome. I was like, I've always been one of the best, but now everybody's really good. And I kind of froze, to be honest. And I ended up getting hurt. I left, and I had to bounce around to a junior college for a year. But then I ended up, and by the way, they won the College World Series the year I left, which is
Wow.
awesome, right?
Yeah.
So it shows you that moonshot goals can happen if you put your
Sure.
mind to it and you get the right team together. I ended up at Arizona State, who has another great program, from Reggie Jackson to Barry Bonds to Bob Horner. And a lot of people said, don't go to Arizona State. Just go to a small school, someplace you'll play. They'll have 17 guys trying out. And I was like, screw it. This is my last opportunity. I'm just going to go all in. If it doesn't work, doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I go there. I work really hard. I came up with this little framework of how to overcome imposter syndrome that I talk about a lot. And I just left it all on the field. I did really well. My wife likes to say it's my glory days. I hit a home run in the College World Series,
Right on.
against Miami. And I was getting ready to be drafted now for the third time because I also got drafted by the Yankees out of junior college.
Yeah.
Ready to go, next step of my career. And it was during the College World Series before the internet, 1994, 95, and my call never came. And
Yeah.
so here I am, 22 years old. My whole life was around, my identity was being a baseball player.
Yeah.
And, I mean, I'm sure I could have walked on or something, but I was kind of depressed. And so my baseball career came to a sudden end, and I just had to kind of figure out, okay, I was a baseball player, but now what am I going to do?
Yeah. You know what just popped into my head when you said that? I think about Moonlight Graham from Field of Dreams, you know, right? That one
Yeah.
moment, but I remember he said, if I never had this chance to be a doctor, that
Yeah.
would have been the real tragedy. Do you ever think about your life and look back and think, if I didn't have that opportunity to rebound from that, that would have been the real problem?
The way I look at it, one thing I loved about my parents were they're always like, "Oh, it's our fault. We should have had you sign, go to the minor leagues, blah blah blah. You could have gone on that way." I don't look at it that way at all. I said, "You know what? This was my choice. You guys supported me either way, which is awesome, and I wouldn't change anything.
Yeah.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it. You know, I've been in the learning and development world for 30 years. Never in my wildest dreams at 6 years old did I ever think I would be in learn. I mean, I wasn't a good student. I mean, at Arizona State, I wouldn't put education as my priority,
Yeah.
and things just kind of happened for a reason. So I wouldn't have changed a thing. I loved everything I did about baseball and the relationships that I made and the athletic education I like to call it and all the skills that you learn from it. I still have so many friends that I played with or played against. And so I just kind of believe everything happens for a reason. It's so difficult to make it to the big leagues, anyways, that yeah, it's almost like a different person too, by the way. I mean, it
Yeah.
was so long ago, and now I'm really immersed in what I do now. So
Yeah.
I loved it, but that was a part of my life that's over with now, and it really helped, I think, develop me into who I am as a business leader and hopefully as a parent too.
So you're obviously highly driven and accomplished in whatever you've done. Who has been that inspirational force? Who's been that heroic figure in your life?
Well, I would say my dad.
Yeah.
I mean, my dad was my idol. Always looked up to him. He passed away of cancer about 14 years ago, but he was a coach of my team. He's the one who started my business, Learn It. I mean, he was a big real estate guy, but he always was a big entrepreneur and always trying things. But and I had great parents.
Yeah.
My mom as well. But at the dinner table, Joe, it was just me and my dad talking all the time, and the other three kids and my mom down there. So he was a big inspiration for me. And then, of course, I had some great, I played for three Hall of Fame coaches. And then I'd always look up to guys like Joe Montana, who I actually got to meet several times because he was a corporate sponsor for our family savings and loan. And I mean, he was an idol of mine too, just seeing like a nice guy with just driven and just an everyday looking person who was just an incredible what he was able to accomplish.
So in this world of educating and teaching people, what was the big education moment for you? The big breakthrough, something you learned, whether it was in school or when you started this business. Was there a moment that really opened the curtains for you?
I think the moment, there's a couple of them. I mean, I think the first one was when I got to learn it, I started off as a receptionist. Let's just fast forward to when I become CEO like 5 or 6 years later. The big moment was, I gotta learn. I mean, so I really dove into reading books and getting mentors and doing all this work. And then probably the bigger moment was, right around the Y2K 2000, where I kind of felt like I had all the answers. I wanted to open up more locations. I wanted to scale. I was kind of a know-it-all. And what I realized after that, when things kind of went sideways, and I was lucky I had my family there to help support to get through that, it taught me a lot of humility. And I think that that's one of the things that I've had really ever since was that, great leaders don't have all the answers. And the best thing you can do is really, surround yourself with a diverse team of people with different strengths and kind of tap into that. So I think those are two of my biggest learning moments.
I'm looking at all those books back there, and you'd mentioned books. What was one of your favorite early books, or what's one of the foundational books that you've read?
I would say one of my favorite foundational books that I ever read was Losing My Virginity by Sir Richard Branson.
Okay.
Yeah, and what I loved about that book is, we were talking about music. He's a big music guy, and everything. But when he first started Virgin, it was like David versus Goliath, right? Going up against British Airways or, the big record companies. And I loved how he talked about, being innovative and creative and taking chances and doing things, and also creating a culture and an environment where when people would come into the Virgin record store at the beginning, there'd be bean bags. People really knew music and people wanted to be there. And so I actually wrote him like a 6-page letter at one point. Uh, I don't know if I sent it. I wish I could find it, but I think that was one of my. And he's got several books after that that are good leadership books. But yeah, that's probably the first book that comes to mind.
So before we got on, we talked about our shared love of music, especially
Yeah.
live. What was the first live show that you saw that blew you away?
Well, the first live show I ever went to, which is kind of funny, I was 8 years old, and I was a Kiss fan. And this is pre-internet, right? And I had the Kiss dolls, and somehow I talked my parents into taking me to the Cow Palace for the Hotter the Hell tour to see Kiss. And we were there for about I don't know, 3 songs. My dad's like, "We're out of here." So he took me out of there. I think the next big show that blew me away was we were on vacation on the East Coast in New York in probably 84, I think it was, maybe, don't quote me on that. And we saw that Bruce Springsteen was playing in Philadelphia at Veterans Stadium.
Oh, wow.
My dad took the cab driver we had, offered him, I don't know what he paid him, but we drove from New York to Philadelphia, and I got to see Bruce Springsteen on the Born in the USA tour.
Oh my God.
That was the second one, and that was freaking amazing.
Oh my God. I'm
And
just
then the
getting goosebumps thinking about
yeah,
it.
and then the third one, I'm a huge Guns N' Roses fan. I mean, that's
Yeah.
always been my thing, right?
Yeah.
Guns, and I've actually even threw. If you read my book, I threw a party for Axl. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But this was Rolling Stones Steel Wheels tour, I think in 1989, and Guns N' Roses opened up for the Rolling Stones. I mean, Axel and Slash and those guys were fighting and everything, but that was amazing. I mean, because they were
Wow.
just so dangerous
Yeah.
and so out there. So those are, I would have to say those are my. I mean, I could go on and on and on about it, but those are
Yeah.
those are three of my most memorable shows. What about you? Just give me one.
My first one, it's so weird, was Kiss. It was animalized with no makeup, and everybody was kind of freaked out, like, what's going on here? And then
Yeah,
and then
really?
my first real memory of something magnanimous was at Arrowhead, Michael Jackson Victory Tour. I didn't my When I was growing up, we were in a duplex and didn't have much money, but my dad put his
Yeah,
name in a hat as a car salesman and won tickets. And it was like, oh my God, when that glove came up out of the ground and
yeah,
all the sequins lit up, it was like, wow, it was crazy.
yeah.
So it
I,
was
I went I went to that in at the Forum in LA. Yeah,
wow,
I mean the Victory Tour wasn't it? That was incredible. You know who else
unbelievable.
is incredible? Prince. You know,
Yeah, I didn't catch him. I've heard so many stories, but yeah, he was the best.
he would out here in the Bay Area, he would do a lot of pop-up shows
Yeah,
and at small places like 500 people. And the guy that I get my concert tickets from always had an in. And so I had to pay for him. I paid a good amount for him. But I would go into these shows and Prince would, sometimes he would play all his hits and then sometimes he'd play jazz and blues for 3 hours.
yeah,
But I would have to say, I mean, he was one of the most, I mean, it was always growing up, Michael Jackson was a good guy, Prince was the bad guy, right?
yeah, right.
I don't know how that actually turned out, but
Yeah, right.
right, I mean, how that turned out. But Prince was just incredible, man. I mean, he was just
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
There is a story about him coming to Kansas City and doing that. There was a place called the Grand Emporium, and it was a blues club. And he just came up, closed the door. They said, "Whoever fits in here does," and he just blew the roof off the place. And he just
Yeah,
played like a 3 hour show at Kemper Arena,
totally.
you know?
Yeah,
So
he'd totally do that.
that's wild. So, aside and just quickly, aside from the home run in the College World Series,
Yeah.
what's the best game that you've ever been to? Energy wise, euphoria. What was that game for you
Something that I played in or a game that I watched?
that you watched, that you witnessed?
That's a great question. I would say probably the most classic game. I didn't have good seats, but I was at the catch, the 49ers versus Dallas,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, where Joe Montana rolled out and hit Dwight Clark in the end zone,
Yeah.
and this was before the 49ers were anything, right?
Yeah.
And Candlestick went freaking berserk,
Yeah.
and so I mean that probably I'd have to say that has to be the most memorable game that I've ever been to.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. If you had a dream tonight, ran into like the 18-year-old version of you, and you could give that
Yeah,
young version of you a piece of advice based on this life you've lived, the wisdom you've accumulated, what
yeah.
advice would you impart on that young version?
I would say the advice I'd give to that young person is get comfortable with failure and getting out of your comfort zone. I think that part of my challenge growing up was that I was really fortunate that I came from a good family, that had money and had a lot of resources. And sometimes I didn't give myself enough credit for some of my accomplishments. And what
Yeah.
I learned now is like, no matter how much coaching I got, when you step up to the plate, you still got to produce. And so I think that my advice to myself would be take chances, get out of your comfort zone. And it's not really failure unless you quit, and you can always learn new things. And I picked that up much later on in life because Joe, as you get older, you're kind of like whatever happens, happens. Just try and do different things. But yeah, that's what I wish I would have done a little bit differently earlier on in my life.
So if you walk into a room of everybody that you've educated throughout all these years that
Mhm.
knows you kind of in a business sense, and you could walk up to a podium and tell them a really fun thing about you, a really fun story, what would you tell them?
A fun story about me that I would tell them is that's a good question. I mean, I guess I would tell them that. I mean, I'd probably tell them the story about how we had the party for Guns N' Roses, and it was a great decision-making story because the place that we had this party at, Joe, was this bar that stayed open late. They failed to let us know that the water might have been shut off. The water might have been shut off, and so the bar owner took me aside like 2 hours before the party, and I didn't realize it was such a big deal. I'm just like, no problem. They'll just get bottled water. And my brother's like, you're an idiot, man. The toilets and everything won't work. And so we had a couple choices. We could cancel the party, or we could just say, kind of like Richard Branson would say, screw it, let's just do it and see what happens. And it's just one of those decisions. And that's the short version of the story. But I think that that's usually the one that people think is kind of fun and interesting. And then to have Axl Rose and not just Axl Rose, but like all the guys from Metallica and Skid Row and everybody show up
Wow.
at this like bar in San Francisco. So yeah, that's kind of a fun one.
That had to be euphoric to just see all those faces in that room.
I thought I was back in the late 80s, early 90s. I mean, I would walk by and Sebastian Bach would had a couple bottles of wine in his hand, and Kurt Hammett from Metallica was out there with his wife dancing, and there was all kind of stuff going on. But
That's
it
cool.
was yeah, it was euphoric. And Axel, he didn't show up till 4 o'clock in the morning, but when he came in, the guy who was a DJ, who's actually a pretty well-known comedian now, Dean Delray, who's awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, he put on Sweet Child of Mine, and Axel almost did like his little snake dance,
Yeah.
But then he brought a girlfriend with him. He gave him a cigar. We sat down, and then a couple of the girls started coming up to him. His girlfriend got pissed, and he stubbed out the cigar, and like 10 minutes later, and left. But I mean, who can, not many people could say they had a party for Axl Rose.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, that's a great story. So, of all of these adventures and all of these things that you've succeeded in and become at this point in your life, what are you the proudest of?
Well, succeeded in, I mean, I've had plenty of failures along the way. We all have, right? We try things, we do things. What am I the most proud of? I would say the most thing I'm most proud of is I think that from a personal perspective, I think I'm a very good dad and husband, and that I'm there for my kids. And from a work perspective, what I'm most proud of, which really kept me going over all these years, is the team that I've been able to build at Learnit. I mean, I'm surrounded, being able to surround myself with great, not just great talent, but people with a great attitude and really cared, because, what we're doing is we're helping people get better and learn and grow and get more confidence. My current team, but also, the alumni who've come through. So I'm super proud of, individuals who have, raised money and have their own companies now who are C-level at places like Autodesk and things like that. So I feel like it's like my extended like baseball team of all these people who've come through. So I'm proud of my family, and I'm proud of the people I've been able to work with at Learnit over the years.
So at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you in all these circles, family,
Mhm.
friends, clients, colleagues, everyone around you, but you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
I look, what I like to tell people is if I can do it, you could do it too. There's nothing special. I mean, did I get an Ivy League degree? No. I mean, did I make it to the big leagues? No. But I've worked hard, and I think I don't take myself overly serious. And I'm proud of what I've accomplished, and I hope there's a lot more left to do. But I just feel like I'm a, everyday, I don't know, pretty good guy that is relatively easy to get along with and kind of a character.
Right on. So if anyone wants to delve into your world, the Learn It All, from the podcast to the program, anything else in your world, where's the best place for them to go?
Yeah, I really enjoy my Learn It All podcast, so check that out. And then I wrote a book called The Learn It All Leader. You can find that anywhere on Amazon. And connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm active on LinkedIn, and I like hearing from people.
Right on. What a joy, man. What a great pleasure. Thank you so much. It's been an honor to talk to you. I appreciate it. Best of luck with everything.
Thanks, Joe. This has been great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. All right, man. Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.